Mr. President, we see gathering clouds in this economic storm, and those clouds are credit card debt. At the very same time that it's becoming harder to get new credit, Americans have almost $1 trillion of credit card debt outstanding. Defaults are rising, and delinquencies are at a 6-year high. It's clear that this just isn't a question of consumers overspending. Credit card companies are trying to boost their profit with deceptive practices and making the situation worse. People are seeing so much of their paychecks eaten up by late fees, over-the-limit fees, and interest payments that today companies can unilaterally increase at any time. Credit card companies are pushing cards on college students who can't afford them, and teenagers are winding up with a lifetime of debt. Companies are raising interest rates on consumers and customers who have a perfect record with that credit card but miss a payment with some other creditor. And maybe worst of all, if you have a credit card, chances are that there's a line in the fine print that says the company can change the rules at any time. Considering some of the changes companies have made already, who knows what they could do tomorrow? Now, I've heard from thousands of people in my home state of New Jersey who feel like their credit card contracts are booby-trapped, that their credit card agreements conceal all kinds of trapdoors behind a layer of fine print. Take one false step, then your credit rating plummets and your interest rate shoots through the roof. These are the same kind of stories we started hearing as the foreclosure crisis began. Now, right now, there's nothing stopping credit card companies from doing this to consumers. No law, no level playing field, no protection for the average American, no way to get the kind of fair treatment we expect as a matter of common sense. When some people see that their interest rate has just shot through the roof for no apparent reason, they call and plead with their companies for help, but their fate lies solely in the hands of the credit card companies. And if the companies don't want to help, they're out of luck and stuck with an even bigger mountain of debt. Meanwhile, credit card companies are still making multi-billion-dollar profits. Now, this isn't just impacting the lives of individual Americans and families trying to make ends meet. It has major ramifications for the entire economy. Yes, one of our major economic challenges right now is getting credit flowing again, but not at the high price credit card companies are imposing. The economy's never going to get running at full speed again if consumers can't get their bearings, because they've fallen behind on a payment treadmill that credit card companies keep speeding up. If there's any time to end deceptive practices and level the playing field, it's now. Now, Mr. President, credit card reform is something I've been calling for since I set foot in the Senate. In 2006, one of the first pieces of legislation I introduced was an effort to reform credit card practices. Even then, it was clear that credit card debt was a looming problem that had the potential to wreak havoc on American families unless we achieve some common sense reforms. If there's one thing we've learned from this economic crisis, it's that we can't wait for a dangerous situation to reach full-blown crisis proportions before we act. This Congress, as I've done for several Congresses now, I introduced the Credit Card Reform Act to tackle essentially the same issues this current bill deals with, including banning retroactive rate increases, protecting young consumers from being sucked into the cycle of debt, reasonably tying fees to costs, and prohibiting unilateral changes to agreements. Now, we have a $1 trillion collective debt in the country. That's how big on credit cards. That's how big this issue is. So, Mr. President, I'm proud to see that Chairman Dodd's credit card reform bill includes many of those provisions. He's been on this for years. His leadership is what's brought us to this floor today. I included in my bill many of those provisions, and we've championed them together. Though in some cases there are some provisions I would have liked to have seen make somewhat stronger. We still look forward to working with the chairman on one or two of those. But this bill represents one of the strongest, most comprehensive efforts yet to end some of the most egregious practice of credit card issuers, while making sure that Americans young and old don't fall so easily into financial traps. The principle behind this bill is simple. Companies should be clear about the rules up front. and they shouldn't change them in the middle of the game. The bill says, similar to a provision I've been pushing, if companies want to change the terms of credit card agreements, they have to give reasonable notice before they do it. It will end an industry practice known as universal default on existing credit balances, so companies don't raise interest rates on customers' outstanding debt when they have a perfect record with that credit card, but maybe miss a payment by a few days with some other creditor. I call this for my bill, and I'm proud to see Chairman Dodd has it in his. I'm also proud that Chairman Dodd included a provision I call for in my bill to make sure that when fees are imposed, they're reasonably tied to the omission or violation that triggered the fee, not just tied to the company's desire to increase profits. And this bill will discourage the bait-and-switch tactics behind the pre-approved offers that almost every American consumer has seen come into their mailbox, an idea I also put forward strongly in my own bill. When you get a card offer, the offer should be real. The terms shouldn't be so good to be true that it fades away once you apply for the card. So this legislation will provide recourse for consumers if a card issuer issues a sleight of hand and changes the terms in the fine print. And one of the things I've really been focused on, I'm glad to see it in this bill, it will protect young consumers from credit card solicitations they didn't ask for. I'm convinced, having seen my own children when they were in college and studying but not working, get incredibly numbers of pre-approved credit cards. I could stack them this high, Mr. President. Or my state director's 2-year-old who got a pre-approved credit card. It seems if you have a Social Security number and a pulse beat that, in fact, you can get a credit card. I'm proud that this bill includes a provision that says people under 21 can proactively opt in to receive credit offers, but they'll no longer be lured into deals unless the decision is their own. It would also ensure that when college students do opt in and apply for a credit card, they prove that they or a cosigner can actually make the payments on that debt before they get that card. That's something I even think should be considered more broadly, ability to pay as a fundamental essence. This way we don't get people on the march of bad debt, bad credit, and all the consequences that flow from that. For far too many people, credit card debt is already a personal financial crisis. If we don't act soon, it could grow to become a national financial crisis, already $1 trillion in collective debt. We cannot allow predatory and deceptive practices in the industry to continue as we did in the subprime mortgage market. We can't allow the credit card problem to become the next foreclosure crisis. So, Mr. President, when it comes down to it, this legislation is about trust. At a time we've seen financial institutions fail, either fail to be profitable or just fail to be honest, it's clear that restoring trust by ending deceptive practices is good for everyone. People aren't demanding too much, just rules that are fair, understandable, and don't change in the middle of the game. It's time we give individual consumers the tools to level the playing field when it comes to dealing with credit card companies. This legislation is about creating a trustworthy financial system, restoring some common sense rules off the road, and stabilizing our economy by making it possible for consumers to get their footing. At the end of the day, that's in the interest of all Americans. So now it's time to act, because like the debt on our credit cards, if we keep putting this problem off month after month, it's only going to get worse. And I look forward to working with the chairman to pass this bill on the floor, making it as strong as possible and making sure that it becomes law. Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor.